Several days ago, I decided to visit Buckingham Fountain in Chicago's Grant Park, as it was a nice day out and I had not been to the fountain in a while. While walking towards Grant Park, I realized that I was not able to see the fountain as almost all of the streets in the area were closed off. At first, I couldn't think about what event Chicago was hosting that required them to block off so many streets. And then I remembered. So, for the third year in a row, NASCAR is coming to Chicago. In my opinion, the idea of hosting a 3-year-in-a-row NASCAR race in Chicago has always been a terrible idea. There are so many logistical issues that come about to operate a car race in one of the most pedestrian-friendly cities in the country, and there are so many negative impacts it would have on the community, both of which I will explain in this video. Hello, I'm the Southland Urbanist. I share my experiences with transit and urban design in Chicagoland and beyond as a way to promote planning practices which benefit society. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe for more. Thanks! So why did Chicago agree to host a NASCAR race in the first place? In 2022, the city of Chicago struck a deal with NASCAR to host the first ever Cup Series street race in Grant Park. The race would run through a 2.2-mile circuit looping along Columbus Drive, Lakeshore Drive, Roosevelt Road, Balboa Drive, Michigan Avenue, Congress Circle, and Jackson Drive. Chicago saw this deal as an opportunity to increase tourism after the pandemic, put itself on the global stage for hosting the first Cup Series, and boost economic activity, with supporters saying that the event would make over $100 million in revenue. In turn, NASCAR saw the deal as an opportunity to modernize the sport, appeal to younger audiences, and experiment with street circuits similar to Formula One. As part of the deal, NASCAR was given a $500,000 permit fee to operate the race, which many argued was too favorable for NASCAR, especially when compared to Lollapalooza's permit of $6 to $8 million. Eventually, when Mayor Brandon Johnson took office, he renegotiated the deal to limit the disruptions the NASCAR race would pose, as well as require NASCAR to cover the costs to public safety and city service. However, as I'm about to discuss, these new implications did very little to mitigate the impact that the NASCAR race has brought to the city of Chicago. Let's first talk about traffic disruptions. This is a list of streets closed for the NASCAR race, as well as the dates that each section of street is closed for. I compiled these street closures onto a map, with each color denoting the duration that each street is closed. Now, although many of these streets, such as Lakeshore Drive and Michigan Avenue, will be closed for less than a week, a significant amount of streets will be closed for much longer, usually between 1 and 3 weeks. Balboa Drive between Columbus and Lakeshore Drive will be closed the longest, with the closure lasting 26 days. The reason for these extended closures is so that asphalt can be repaved following heat waves, which cause the pavement to buckle, a process which takes several weeks. But you know what? The closed streets can be somewhat beneficial, as it would encourage walking as an alternative mode of transportation, and people walking through Grant Park won't have to cross several lanes of busy street traffic. What do you mean Grant Park is closed to pedestrians? So yeah, a significant amount of the area will be closed off for all forms of traffic, not just motor vehicles. This is a map of sidewalks closed in preparation of the NASCAR race. Although less sidewalks appear to be closed off, notice that the average duration the sidewalks will be closed for is much longer than the streets. I'd hate to know the reactions of families on vacation in Chicago, awaiting to see landmarks such as the Buckingham Fountain or walk along the lakefront, only to realize that those places are either completely closed to the public or are less convenient to travel to. As you can tell, these road closures will have detrimental effects on transportation efficiency in downtown Chicago. With numerous road and sidewalk closures taking place in such a large area, pedestrians and vehicles will be crammed onto the surrounding streets, which will drastically increase traffic. The sidewalks that are still open are narrow, awkward to walk through, and potentially unsafe, as they have insufficient protection from construction work and motorized vehicles. CTA buses such as the 3, 4, 6, 26, 143, and 151 will all have to be rerouted for weeks, creating confusion for drivers and passengers and leading to significant delays. Furthermore, emergency vehicles that would have used these closed streets instead have to detour along stop-and-go traffic from vehicles trying to squeeze together in the remaining streets that are open. So people within this area would have to wait longer for emergency vehicles to arrive if their house is on fire or if they suffer a heart attack, all for the sake of spectators watching a driver crash into a wall at 80 miles an hour as they try to maneuver a left turn. Aside from traffic disruptions, there are many environmental concerns associated with hosting a NASCAR race in the central core of America's third largest city. During the past 2 races, noise levels reached up to 110 decibels, enough to cause hearing damage within 15 minutes. I'm sure that will be a fun experience to nearby residents. NASCAR vehicles also do not have catalytic converters to reduce the amount of harmful chemical toxins emitted from their exhaust pipe, meaning that large amounts of chemical toxins, including nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, and carbon monoxide, will be released into the atmosphere, all while Chicago continues to struggle with air quality issues. And if Chicago is actively pursuing to reduce carbon emissions and convert all of its buildings to renewable energy, a NASCAR race apparently is a perfect opportunity for them to reach their goals. Also, despite claims of $100 million in revenue for Chicago, the NASCAR race will have negative effects on the local economy. During the past two races, many local businesses in the surrounding area saw significant losses in revenue due to the traffic disruptions and noise. This was apparent in the snack shop on Jackson Boulevard and Michigan Avenue, which sought compensation after 19 days of lost revenue, as well as a bookstore along Michigan Avenue which experienced losses of $15,000 over a period of 4 days. Along with impacts to local businesses, the costs that Chicago alone spent on preparations and operation of the NASCAR race, including permits, police overtime, road repairs, and barrier installation, totaled more than $3 million, despite NASCAR covering additional costs. With the combination of traffic disruptions, pollution, economic strain on local businesses, and hefty operational costs, it's easy to understand that Chicago residents have had enough. In a recent poll, 55% of Chicago residents oppose future races due to the aforementioned impacts it would have on the surrounding communities. Furthermore, many residents see the NASCAR race as a takeover of public space by a private entity. This is true when considering that public events normally held in Grant Park, such as the Taste of Chicago and Softball League games, were forced to relocate or reschedule their events to later dates so that a for-profit corporation could take over Grant Park. What was once an open and accessible part of the city has become fenced off and commercialized for weeks, leaving residents to deal with the noise, rerouted transit, and blocked park access, all for an event that offers them little in return. So what could Chicago have done instead? Well, did you know that there is a functioning NASCAR speedway 50 miles southwest of Chicago? It's called the Chicagoland Speedway, located just outside of Joliet. Why not host a major NASCAR race there? You have all the infrastructure necessary for a race, so you won't have to close off a dozen streets that tens of thousands of vehicles rely on for up to 3 weeks, as well as impact dozens, if not hundreds, of businesses that rely on those streets to operate, all just to repave asphalt. Now, you might be thinking that the speedway is in the middle of cornfields, so why would anyone want to travel there to see a race? Well, allow me to introduce you to Bristol Motor Speedway, located in the Kingsport, Bristol metropolitan area, which has a population of about 300,000, compared to the Chicago area's population of 9 million. The speedway itself is 7 miles from the nearest city, a comparable distance that Chicagoland Speedway is from Joliet. Despite its rural location, Bristol Motor Speedway has a seat capacity of 146,000, and I'd imagine that there are many more people who would just be at the tailgate on a race day. If you can attract 146,000 plus people to see a NASCAR race in rural Tennessee, you can easily do the same for a place on the outskirts of one of the largest metro areas in the country. However, I do understand that hosting a NASCAR race in a conventional speedway 50 miles from Chicago defeats the purpose of NASCAR's attempt to experiment with street circuits, and Chicago's attempt to increase tourism. But really, most people in the area don't even care about NASCAR, as only 21% of Cook County residents surveyed said that they had interest in attending. This makes sense, as Chicago is one of the most walkable cities in the country, so it's completely pointless to block off acres of walkable parks that millions of people visit just to host a car race. If Chicago wanted to increase tourism and put itself on the global stage, Chicago officials did not have to invest millions of dollars on a 2-day-long event that has negative effects on the local economy and environment. They could have instead invested in events that celebrate the unique culture of Chicago, the reason tourists visit Chicago in the first place. Open House Chicago, an event which allows visitors to view countless buildings of architectural significance in the city, could have been expanded upon. An international culinary event could have been hosted, similar to the Taste of Chicago, which allows locals and tourists to taste cuisines from around the world. A new attraction or landmark could have been built as an internationally recognized symbol of Chicago, similar to what you have for the Gateway Arch in St. Louis and Space Needle in Seattle. Finally, more money could have been spent on enhancing Lollapalooza's lineup by bringing in more renowned artists. Now, some of you might be saying that Lollapalooza causes as much disruption as a NASCAR race has done, especially with traffic. But Lollapalooza's negative impacts on the community are much less severe and prevalent. Unlike NASCAR, Lollapalooza is a civic event with broad community engagement, benefiting many local vendors and residents. Lollapalooza also has a much smaller footprint, as it does not require closing major arterial streets to repave asphalt and build barriers across the downtown, nor does it emit as much greenhouse gases. The fallout from the NASCAR race should serve as a lesson for Chicago. Large-scale events are not just about creating flashy visuals and drawing international attention for the sake of a for-profit entity. They must be planned with meaningful community input, transparent cost-benefit analysis, and a clear respect for public space. If the city wants to attract tourism without alienating its residents, it needs to prioritize events that reflect Chicago's identity and enhance daily life for the people who live there, not disrupt it. This is something city officials should consider when deciding to renew their license with NASCAR. As for NASCAR, if they really wanted to run a street race, they did not have to ruin a pedestrian-friendly city over the course of 3 weeks. They instead could have had a race in the downtown of a car-dependent Sunbelt city, such as Charlotte, Dallas, or Orlando, where there is already an established audience base and state governments that are sympathetic towards car infrastructure in comparison to transit infrastructure. Just a thought. I'm the Southland Urbanist. I'll see you next time. Also, I technically did get to see a small portion of Buckingham Fountain during my walk, but just the very top of it.